All right. So, happy Saturday. This is Jillian, of course. So, the background that I have, it's like a perfect storm. You couldn't get any perfect than the background that I have because not only do I have the Vietnam War as my backdrop, the platform, but I also was raised by a silent generation family or parents. So I have exposure to like the 1930s, 1920s, because I did meet my grandmother, my adopted grandmother, sort of met my grandfather. And so I have then also that influence of my parents because of what she was raised with as far as Art Deco and all of that. And then I have the current politics of the day as I was growing up and of course up to this point. But I also expose myself to the conspiracy world. So not only do I have a mainstream thought process backed up by history and then of course being raised Jewish on top of that, and then also part of the conspiracy world for more than 10 years. And I've traveled to so many different fucking places. Yes, I wasn't in a Jesus cult, but I observed a Jesus cult. And I've not only traveled to different places, but lived in different places. So I actually was exposed to the culture without like just visiting the tourist traps. But I immersed myself into the culture and lived the lifestyle, even if it was like for a couple months, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 9 months. Okay, so that, and then developing something like the J world. And so the conspiracy world was the backdrop of the J world, which is the Jilly Juice that then evolved into realizing that food is the answer. It's not just the Jilly Juice. The Jilly Juice was like the ionic energy that people need that are missing to wake up the demons in their body and then trigger in an immunological response to release. But people are told to be afraid to release. They're afraid of pain. They're told to be afraid of pain. They have all these fear campaigns in their body, mind, and spirit that were traumatized into them. And so, yeah, so they don't release. But the whole J world was about releasing all of the PTSD. Because we didn't have climate change back in 2016, 2017, when I first introduced the J world, which was the salt and the water and the fermented cabbage juice, like a sauerkraut, but it had more salt than the usual. Okay. And then of course, when you're told that salt is poison or too much salt is bad, it causes dehydration. Well, yeah, if you don't drink water. Oh, it causes high blood pressure. Yeah, if you don't drink water, because the reason why you have high blood pressure yet again is because your anti-diuretic hormone kicks in and retains the water, and it has to push it throughout the bloodstream. And so it raises your blood pressure, of course. People don't drink enough water, or they're taking so many supplements, causing the body to have constricted blood vessels, forcing the body to raise the blood pressure to push the blood and all the stuff throughout the body. So you have a higher blood pressure, hypertension, all that shit. And we have people who are deficient in different minerals, and they're on so many supplements and drugs, and they don't drink enough water, and they don't even drink milk either, and they're in starvation. So back in the beginning of the Jilly Juice world, when at the beginning, before the height of all the bullshit, we already knew in the holistic world that when we were doing the herxing, the detoxing symptoms, that was accepted. Because you go to these yoga places, hot yogas and all these different detoxing clinics, and everyone's sweating and throwing up, diarrhea, and, they're doing all their enemas and coffee enemas and all that shit. And they're all perfectly okay with doing that, right? But as soon as you introduce a food like salt that is, or a mineral, electrolytes, that has had the fear of God pounded into people's body, minds, and spirits for so long, and that induces a release process. Let me tell you, it's like children freaking the fuck out several years ago. It was like children, and it was all over the fucking internet. And so, yeah, oh my God, did I get backlash? People coming out of the woodwork that I hadn't talked to in a while, or I talked to, and then I don't know what the hell, but then they like flipped and turned right against me. Like, thought I was Satan. Like the next coming of Satan. That's I mean, and it's quite interesting now, 7 years, almost 8 years later. Okay. And I've figured out everything. I figured it all out. And I uncovered my own memories and everything else. And I look back at the people that just fucking turned on me and thought the worst. Could give a shit if I lived or died, literally. They could give a shit if I lived or died. And now they're looking at my information. But what prompted it? Because I understand the whole MK Ultra. I understand the whole programming of people. The fear campaigns in the politics, in the religions, in the science dogmas, in the child-rearing practices. And some people had more of that in their background because of scientists in their background. And they're wondering why shit's breaking down. Or maybe not. Maybe they're expecting it. But what is the attraction now to my information? Oh, because we're realizing that we have been programmed sexually. We have been programmed religiously. We have been biophysically or biologically or immunologically programmed. Nothing is poison out there. Remember that, okay? So don't ever try to twist my words and say that something is poison. Nothing is poison out there. But we have been programmed and we have been scared away from the release process. So that way you can get relief. Release the pressure. Or gain pressure because there's not enough pressure in your body, not enough fat in your body to produce a proper immune system that will work for you. Once we figured out that fat is your immune system, you need the adipose tissue that is missing in so many people's biology because they're told to be skinny because of all the marketing, all the religions, the sciences, the politics, the social constructs of the society, the constant pursuance of sexuality on every level. It doesn't matter what it is. And so it's like, so these poor people out there who are so compromised because they don't have enough fat. They don't have hardly a proper working immune system. And they're afraid of food. And they've been traumatized by war. Not only a biological war because of all the antibiotics and the painkillers and the prescription drugs, but also the wars that were deployed back in the 1960s, 70s, 1990s, 2000s. Before that was World War I and World War II. And so my husband and I were hanging out yesterday, and I was watching The Breakfast Club, because that right there, you watch The Breakfast Club, you understand societal programming, you understand all the social constructs that are going on, you understand all the wars, the everything, all that stuff. And so you watch that plus Born on the 4th of July from the perspective of a Vietnam War vet who lost his legs, was put in a war that was a lie. And Oliver Stone made it very clear. The writing, where they're like, you were sold a bill of goods. You were told that the communism was going to take over the world and you had to go in there and save the world from communism. And so people were dying in Vietnam, seeing atrocities, and from that one guy's perspective, Ron Kovic's perspective, of first being yay, patriotic, to then realizing he was used as a tool, almost like a human sacrifice, comes back home, and then everybody is against him. But when he went in there, he was told to be a hero. See, when I'm adopted here, right in America, and that's why all my Facebook reels have the Vietnam War music to my stuff, I'm adopted here to pursue the American dream, right? To have an opportunity to develop something, to do whatever, have the American dream, whatever the fuck that is, right? So I do get the American dream. I married somebody, got some education, developed a thought process, and I'm like, wow, I discovered something amazing. And how I justified all the symptoms, because the holistic world was doing all the herxing. When I wrote to the Attorney General, they're asking me, well, why, they're asking me all these 10 questions. And I'm like, well, shit, the freaking holistic world, they do the detoxing all the time, and these people are in pain all the time, releasing shit, right? So that's what I based upon, that it was okay to be in pain and to release stuff. The other half I didn't get until a few years later, about the food supply. And so when I'm discovering something, and I'm thinking, and people are getting relief, because I was getting testimonies of relief. Though people are like, oh yeah, that's just, what is it? I don't know. It's all in their head. The placebo effect. That's what they were trying to attribute the testimonies was to, the placebo effect. Okay, thanks. And then everyone turns against me. And it was a war declared on me. And people in my old world in California fucking turned on me. It was like the whole fucking world, like, hey, yeah, come to America to have the opportunity, do something for yourself, be something, have your parents say, it's all bootstrap mentality, nothing is given to you, everything is earned. Well, no shit. And so I earned my way into whatever I was doing, developed something amazing, and the whole fucking world turned on me. Didn't even want to listen to where I was coming from, turned it into a whole fucking circus. And even the people that I used to know in California, of whom I don't talk to anymore, definitely could not wait to turn on me. I had to block so many fucking people back 7 years ago. It was freaking insane. And so then I understand what Ron Kovic had to go through. He was sold a bill of goods. He was told, yeah, come to America, or not come to America. He was told, go to the war, Vietnam, go fight the war, go potentially lose your life to protect the Americans at home who are still going about their business, going to school, doing whatever. He's sacrificing his body, mind, and spirit for his country, only to be told that it was all a fucking lie, and he comes home and everyone calling him an enemy. He had all the hippies, and this was really, really awesome about Oliver Stone. He showed all the hippies with all the little peace signs, like almost spitting on him, basically spitting on him. But that's America. That's balancing both sides. That's understanding that they need to have life and innovation, but there's also has to be so much death. And if you volunteer yourself, you put yourself out there for whatever reason, whether someone tells you, oh yeah, you should go and defend your country or do this, or you want to go and change something that you see isn't right in society, whatever it is, you will be hung out to dry until they figure out where the fuck you're coming from if they don't understand. Or you'll be hung out to dry because it's going against what maybe a bigger picture is going on, which I realized that in the conspiracy world, there's a whole huge, depopulation agenda, but can you prove it? Well, at this point, since people are so used to dying anyways, it doesn't even matter to them. There's no reason to prove it. Your belief system is already proof enough. If you think you should die, that's the depopulation agenda. And that was pounded into you ever since day fucking one, whenever you started existing. But the only reason why now it's called the depopulation agenda, what the Georgia Guidestones, is because the environment is so accelerated. The climate change is accelerating your belief system. That's the only difference between what you already knew 4 or 5 years ago about death and reproduction, but it has been accelerated. And now we have people dealing with fast-moving cancers, deteriorating rapidly, excessively aging, and constantly going to the next herb extract remedy. So yesterday, my husband and I hung out and we watched some of the documentaries about Vietnam and about, and then of course the Breakfast Club. And I'm like asking him, would you, if your government asked you to go fight, would you do it? And when I asked him the second time around, he said he didn't say anything. He said, yeah, he probably would go fight if his government asked him to, because he comes from a patriotic background. Most people here in Ohio, in this area that I live in, very patriotic. Veterans of foreign wars, veterans of wars, and we thank them for their service. But now, as we've watched the last how many years, at least even with Afghanistan, 20 years occupying someplace and nothing has changed. The Taliban is still in control and many people have lost their lives. That right there was a lesson. It's kind of the same thing as the Vietnam War when you think about it. But would people do it again? Some people would say they would go and fight. But I'm thinking like with the Vietnam War, with Afghanistan, all the different other conflicts. When someone says go overseas and go occupy a country, today, would you do it? Would you volunteer to go? And people have, right now at this point, we have people who have kids. Their parents are in the Air Force or whatever, and their kids I don't say drafted, but they volunteered. Okay, if you volunteer yourself, before, back in the 1960s in the Vietnam War, it was draft. So they were forcing people. That's why there's such huge craziness, because they were forcing people to go and give up their life. Now, after all that, and of course all the religions came after that, the cults and the killers and all that stuff, and all the war stuff. Now, you volunteer. Like Afghanistan, you volunteer to go and lay down your life for something that somebody told you to do because so many politics are involved. Now, Freedom of Information Act, there are inserts, there are warnings on the back of the bottle. There's so much information all over Facebook, all over YouTube. And even people are like with Jillian or Jilly Juice are like, oh, watch out. Oh yeah. People have predisposed issues. It's going to come up, but you have to understand what is poison, what is dangerous. And that's where all the confusion is, because when something brings up demons in people, pain and suffering and all that, well, they got to realize that anything that's FDA approved isn't poison. I don't care whether it's a therapy or whether it's a food or water or even EPA. It's not poison. That's your barometer, because if the government really wanted to destroy you, you'd all be dead. So there's no reason to poison people. You don't realize that you hold 99.99% of the power in how you deal with evolution, deal with exposure to elements, to microbes. You hold the power. But when you have something psychologically pounded into you, even before the 1960s, because 1930s, 20s, the starvation, the opium, the drugs, the constant reproduction, all the fear campaigns, the religions and the politics embedded into generations of people, then you're going to have fear of any kind of symptoms that come up. You're going to attribute, make correlation equals causation, that because an apple made you go into an immunological response, you're going to say that that apple was poisoned. If a tomato caused you to go into an immunological response, you think that tomato is poison. If you're told that something is genetically modified and has bioengineered ingredients, and then you've already have the fear of the anti-V world, the fear of everything has to be organic, the fear of genetically modified, then anything that says GMO or bioengineered or any other of those trigger words, you will have an automatic psychological response of fear, of there's a word, denying something, denying food. And then that carries over to then your offspring. Then you have your children afraid of food, afraid of water, afraid of microbes, volunteering themselves to go to war in foreign countries they don't have no business going into, to defend their country. No one's coming in here. And if they do, here's the thing. If the system allows, like what happened in 9/11, somehow all of our guards were down. And America wasn't as powerful as we thought, right? Oh, America is powerful, but did we allow things to come in? Here's the thing. When you allow something to come in, and that's all the psychological campaigns, inviting the vampire to come in, the vampire just sucks the blood and attacks everyone. But you don't really see that because the vampire is all dressed up nice until he gets inside your house and then does stuff. Yeah, the things that happen at a micro level to a macro level, as far as atrocities and wars and deaths, we've invited everything in. We've invited it all in. We've allowed our government to invite it in because we didn't know any better as humans. We're just listening to everybody else. Having authority tell us everything. What to believe, what not to believe, what to be in fear of, what not to be in fear of. And so every single thing that happens to people is because we've allowed it in. We've allowed it to come in. We didn't have our own discernment because we've allowed the fight or flight hormone to be abused by those in religions using the fear of God to cause so much angst. The fear of something external like Satan, fear of God and Satan, demons and all that stuff out there, right? And then we have politicians, the fear of the other party, the fear of other countries that have had their own thing go on. That's politics. And of course, the fear of science, the fear of microbes, the fear of food, air, pain, symptoms, mucus. I mean, the fear campaigns are endless. When do you get down to baseline where you actually have your, I won't say organic, where you have complete control over your fight or flight syndrome? So I'll tell you, that anxiety of your fears being triggered, it takes years to finally get to your final, like to what you're supposed to be as far as fight or flight, where you're not reacting to somebody, where you're learning how to put boundaries down against those that are instilling fear into you. And that could be your friends, your family, trolls, people out there that are influential. Once you once you put your boundaries down, get rid of people who are influential, always putting the fear of something in you, then you have to release those traumatized memories in your body. Because even there'll be triggers on the internet, there'll be triggers on the news, there'll be triggers out there in the population. When you go outside, listen to the radio. So then you have to get rid of the fears inside the traumatized cells in your body. And I'll tell you, it is so difficult to relinquish yourself from those triggers because sometimes people go after those triggers purposely. They purposely entertain things for so many reasons, but there's so many underlying reasons why. Like, I'll tell you an example. When I allowed the trolls to fuck with me, because I have invited that in by going and looking at certain things. And so the fear of people not agreeing with me, the fear of admonishment. When you release that fear, who cares what people think and all that shit, and literally who cares what people think, and you're not reacting to that, then you stop responding to those that are always in conflict with your information, that always have to counter you and say you're this, 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 and this. And then you walk away from all that bullshit. But not only do you walk away, why you walk away is because you now finally have a platform, something that you know is so indisputable as far as science and social constructs that there's no reason to entertain all the fear campaigns, because the fear campaigns is because you don't really know for sure. And you're trying to get to a point of knowing for sure for you. Okay, maybe not for everybody else, but at least for you. And so releasing all of that, the PTSD in your body, as far as your cells, and even the lifestyle. Because again, like having an animal is setting yourself up for fear. Taking care of anything that is dependent on you is setting yourself up for fear, for heartache, and for someone to control you through that fear and heartache. Okay, well, how is that? Because once you do not accept death as an outcome for anyone, even an animal, and now let's say with fishing, we don't kill fish. It's trauma to the fish fishing, but what are you going to do at this point? But owning an animal, when you finally, and I still feel stuff for the fish, but whatever, I can't, that's part of the straddling of the both worlds. But when you stop accepting death, then having an animal, having a child who will have their own mind and may not understand where you're coming from because they have to be integrated into a system of death, you're not going to want to entertain that. Because the process to convert from death to life literally would also be on board. And if the system is producing animals and humans with major deficits that force you to get them treated so they don't suffer astronomically, until the system does that, you'll be suffering, you will be accepting death, you'll be desensitized, and then this is why we have the society we have. Because of that. Because we have allowed the system to develop and breed trauma in the population, in animals, in humans, in everything. And that's part of the whole, America, the last greatest experiment. And so yesterday, my husband and I hung out and watched some of the documentaries around the Vietnam War. And then I showed him the movie Born on the 4th of July. And we also watched The Breakfast Club. So all wars is breeding death and trauma into people. And they are intentional wars. Okay, they could come from organically being scared of communism, but really, okay. Do we really know we do know if anything's organic or who the hell knows? The height of the drug evolution on the streets in the 1960s and 70s, the gangs and the drug wars. When you have so many drugs proliferate on the streets with draconian laws, then children get employed to sell because they're not subject to the same adult laws. And so you see how that went. When you watch that documentary on YouTube, that's on my Facebook timeline, the reason why they were employing the 13 and 14-year-olds to sell the drugs is because some Rockefeller developed legislation that made the laws were so draconian that to be an adult and be convicted of a drug crime would be like 20-something years. So if a kid did it, they wouldn't get as harsh of a punishment. And so they tried to eradicate drugs back in the 1960s. But that's the thing. That's both sides. That's the system playing both sides. That's what you got to understand. That's what I've realized. That's why I don't get involved in trying to be a narc on anyone or anything, because the system plays both sides of the fence. And you don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to be a do-gooder and I'm going to go report everything and go, oh, look this. Look, I'm going to go help the police with this. I mean, obviously, if there's a crime committed right in front of me and I happen to be a witness right in front of me and there's death and destruction and you can't, like, I'm there, I mean, I'll try not to have to, but it's like, that probably won't happen. But I stay out of shit. I don't get involved with anything because you have no idea which side You don't have no idea who's involved in what. You just have no idea. And so when you have someone like Nelson Rockefeller developing draconian laws, and then drugs are put on the streets for reasons, for so many reasons, it could be like catfishing or fishing for drug addicts and criminals. So you have no idea. Now you just realize why it's out there. Why are drugs out there? For so many reasons. So many, not only money, but to depopulate people who are weak to them. Okay? And I'll be honest. All right? So why do we have so many drugs? We have people reproducing on bodies at deficit, along with PTSD from avant garde child-rearing practices from religion, politics, and scientific beliefs. Basically, avant garde is normal nowadays, right? Because everyone's childhood was kind of fucked up, as you can see in the Breakfast Club. Someone that was raised in a religious cult, like the Duggars or anyone else, homeschooled, and they weren't really allowed to see too much, that could be to somebody else fucked up. Someone given such mainstream, watch the Breakfast Club, watch the perspectives of the Breakfast Club. Each of them had their own suffering. It may look all, hoity-toity, dandy, whatever from the outside, like from Judd Nelson to Emilio Estevez in that movie. But Emilio Estevez in that movie, he had his own suffering of having to be the best all the time. And then people, and then when you have an alcoholic father beating you up all the time, and an alcoholic mother beating you up all the time, that's a suffering. And when you have a socialite who has to live up to everybody's expectations, that's a suffering. And then you have the weirdo like Ali Sheedy dealing with her shit. That's a suffering. Okay? And even though they said, she said she was a nymphomaniac, but she really wasn't. But the fact they introduced that said that's also the grooming of the sexual grooming. But they took that away. But it was there. They put it out there. That I caught that pretty quickly. I was like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing here. All right, so the children of the 80s, that was in your face. All that those movies are in your face on what the programming was. But it would start off in old Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood. That was the start of the programming. The Shirley Temples, and you heard about what she went through in the conspiracy world. Marilyn Monroe. Okay? The programming of people. So why are people reproducing so much? Their bodies are in deficit. Why are their bodies in deficit? Because of PTSD, antibiotics, starvation, and more reproducing. The antibiotics and remedies and painkillers are because of PTSD from reproducing so much. And so you can have microcellular reproduction at the micro level, and it is minimally based upon evolution and the environment, like changes. So like right now, I'll have microcellular reproduction, and so I'll have a lot of food, maybe the day before. Body has to release, so then I notice that I have mucus coming out in the middle of the night. Blow my nose, and I have to poop a lot. And, on the other end, because when I blow my nose so hard, I fart, so I have an open system. There's communication up here, communication down there. The pressure, me blow my nose, pushes the bowels and pushes the poop out when it needs to. Okay? And that's minimal microcellular reproduction because the food is producing cells and it gets either distributed to the places that it needs to, and then the waste material gets put in the prospective places. That's the immune system. That's digestion. That's everything. Okay? And so you can have microcellular reproduction at the micro level, and it's minimally based upon evolution in the environment, like changes. You cough, you sneeze, you blow your nose, you defecate, you excrete, no big deal. But this is where people are having issues even today. You can have macrocellular reproduction at the macro level based upon the aggressive evolution in the environment triggering reproduction, the sex hormones. And this is when people are in such deficit, then the cold and flu season, the allergy season triggers them even more. And so it doesn't become like a cold or a flu or allergies. Then those infections, those times of infection and sickness turns into diagnosable conditions over time, because then they compound it. Who's they? The people who don't like feeling symptoms compound it with different herbs, extracts, whether it's pharmaceuticals or they turn into Mother Nature. Those herbs are antibiotic. You will have an antibiotic resistance at some point, and it will compound into another diagnosable condition. So you might get relief because the body's in shock that you introduce something aggressive as an herb, and you might feel relief, but eventually it will adapt to that. You will have an antibiotic resistance, and then the growth and all of that will come back 20-fold. That's why people go from herb to herb to herb, pharmaceutical to pharmaceutical to pharmaceutical, painkiller to painkiller to painkiller, because eventually they won't work, because the body's going to want to live. It wants to release. You're trying to stop it and shock the body into not. And you're also developing more demons from all that. But you're getting the relief for a minute. But again, remember, the devil takes his due. Remember Cinderella. When the clock strikes midnight, everything will be as it was before. You just cast a spell on yourself with the herbs, the extracts, the surgeries, the painkillers. And so you can have macrocellular reproduction at the macro level based upon aggressive evolution in the environment triggering reproduction and the sex hormones. The diagnosable conditions are major reproduction, like major. And sometimes it's dropping a child. Sometimes it's looking so gorgeous that you're dropping kids left and right because the body is in deficit. It's under a major reproduction. And with humans, we have a certain amount of time that we can be mommies and daddies before the body completely gives out. And that's what was bred into us for so many years. For I don't know how, I mean, when you think about it, I couldn't tell you how many, I mean, I could say if I wanted to use the Bible as a reference, 6,000 years. If we want to use Israel and Jerusalem and Mesopotamia and all the cradle of civilizations and the cradles of humanity, we could say the whole cradle of civilization of this whole dying, reproducing, and breeding trauma and fear and abusing someone's fight or flight syndrome has been going around for 6,000 years. And so fear is the weapon. However, you're supposed to be in fear because you don't want nefarious people to hurt you. So, I finally got down to my prototype of my fight or flight syndrome, got rid of all the fucking PTSD of my own upbringing, and then my environment, like my world that I live in, the economics, the world I live in. I just noticed indicators. I know the changes. I know what I have to do in case of this, this, and this. I have measures put in place. Nothing is perfect, and maybe you need to have more than plan A or plan B or plan C, maybe a plan D. But you got to figure out all the different scenarios that could happen and prepare for them. But no, you can't be too prepared. So always prepare. So there's no fear. I know a lot of people's situations because it's all in plain sight. No one's hiding anything really. People are who they are. You entertain who you feel is safe enough to entertain. You make calculated risks. And so there's no fear really. I don't get involved in too many people's bullshit and drama. I don't hang out with so many people and get involved with all that stuff. So there's nothing to be in fear of being involved in something that's nefarious. Right? I stay mostly to myself and I hang out with my husband and maybe a few choice people based upon, both of our lifestyle. And I pretty much mind my own business. I don't stick my nose in anyone else's bullshit. I really don't. I don't want to know half people's bullshit out there. I really don't. People put it out there, okay, that's fine. And I don't want to get involved with people. That's why I don't do private messages. Okay? I can tell you, when you learn how the world works, you'll learn that that you just got to be careful of a lot of things out there. It's not that you're in fear, you just now understand how the world works and you act accordingly. But since fear has been the weapon, but how has your fight or flight hormone been abused? Because of politics, the fear of the other side, the fear of immigrants. Oh yeah, fear. We have law enforcement. And if immigrants are doing bad stuff, we have law enforcement. They're not always going to be around all the time, so you stay unto yourself. Don't get involved with too much bullshit. So how has your fight or flight hormone been abused? Politics, religion, science dogmas. Okay, the fear of whatever in politics, the fear of God and Satan in religion. And then in science, the fear of microbes, the fear of pain, the fear of symptoms, the fear of food, the fear of air, the fear of water, the fear of therapies, the fear of science can be crazy. And now people don't even know the difference between what they should be fearful of and what someone has told them to be fearful of. So when you have people telling you, oh, salt is poison, and you pound that into your kids' head, and then you have that pounded into your head, and you pound it into your grandkids' head, oh, now you have people are in fear of shit. They should actually understand why they need to have elements and minerals in their body. But no, now they're in deficit. Now their body is atrophied. Low sodium diets, low sugar diets, gluten-free diets, no milk, bones are breaking, starvation. That's the depopulation agenda at the hand of the parents. And so when something like that goes on, when someone tells you to be in fear of stuff, they have absolutely no discernment. So they are foolishly brave and unfearful, like, oh, I'm a badass. I'm going to go out there and do this and do that. I'm not afraid, right? You see those guys and girls do that. And this is why we are where we are. And when you think about it, they should be afraid of the medical holistic system, afraid of all the medical professionals, but they're not. They're giving themselves freely to all of them. And they're all brave. I'm going to go out there with people who are nefarious, that are going off half-cocked, that have their own issues. And they're like out there communing, and they don't know if someone's going to just, pop off at some point. And so it's all backwards. When you're surrounded by some people that you have no idea their backgrounds, you have no idea what's going on in their world, you have no idea, strangers, and you're also parading your kids and showing off your body to strangers on Facebook or anywhere else, out there in public, girls wearing booty shorts and all that stuff. And you're not afraid of really the diversity of people that you don't know is doing and do what or whatever. But you're willing to give yourself to something that is causing trauma to you voluntarily. That's where the discernment's all messed up. That's lack of discernment. It's been switched. See, when you're in a homogenized group, this is where the whole balancing of homogenization and heterogeneous, and what do I mean by that? When everyone's like all the same, right? Well, I won't say all the same. You could have diversity, but also know that people are not going to destroy you to get ahead. That they're not intolerant. See, intolerance, racism, yes. Intolerance, racism, the feeling of despair. I watched a movie last night called The Sun with Laura Dern and Hugh Jackman. And yeah, when you have that son in the population who is in despair, who's very depressed, has his own issues, even probably suicidal on some level. Yeah, you don't want that in the population because they're unpredictable. All right? And so a homogenized population, when you think about a safe homogenized population, are people who are relatively predictable, who aren't so damaged and so in despair and not so triggered and emotional that can't tell the difference between what to be fearful of see that's the thing. You want a population that isn't like that. You want a population that's relatively predictable. When you're in a population where you have everything under the sun, intolerance, to the point where you saw that meme or that post that I put on Facebook, or back in the 17 or 15 or something hundreds, when a guy was hanged naked, burned, because he introduced an idea that there's stars with planets orbiting and all that stuff. And the intolerance of the people who I guess were geocentric at the time, I think. They caused death to that person. That's intolerance. When you look on Facebook, you look at anyone that introduced a new idea and you see people who develop campaigns against your new idea, that's the intolerance. That's on the lines of racism, intolerance, all the isms. Okay, feminism can be like that too, because you can be like against a man, but I'm not against men or women or anything. But now you're seeing the unpredictable intolerance. And so, yeah, you should be more afraid to go out there in public in really diverse groups where people have been radicalized on such a level against a person, place, or thing, a political religion, and a scientific dogma, that even people are afraid to speak out, even in their own homogenized groups, in fear of what someone in their family or friends or association would say. So how do you breed a homogenized group that is diverse, that can evolve? That's why we have the internet. That's why we have social media. That's why we're in a surveillance 1984 society, which I'm perfectly fine with. I am pretty much transparent. I could give a shit. I don't say I have nothing to hide, because I mean, it's not even about that. Is that we have people who are giving off indicators, who don't have discernment, that think what they do is normal. And it could be, or it could not be. And that's going to be all exposed. And if you can't explain why you do the things you do, if you can't explain it, then you'll disappear after you thought that you put out something that was normal out there. Or you'll feel ashamed for what you put out there. And that has its own shit. But I'll tell you, now we're going to see what people think is normal out there, what people think is acceptable. And it probably is on some level. But then you're seeing the trauma. You're seeing the sexual programming, you're seeing the violent programming, you're seeing the religious programming, you're seeing the biochemical programming, the science programming. It's all out in plain sight. And you can explain every single... Once you understand human behavior, you can explain everything. Once you understand biological human behavior, you understand trauma, you understand fears. Then it's like taking off again the rose-colored sunglasses and being like, wow, this is the world that it really is. Not the fantasy that someone painted you and told you what to be in fear of, what to accept, what to do, how to say it, what to say, what to study. Then you don't really want to hang out with too many people. Then you want to stay with relatively predictable people. But people are like, oh yeah, well, so that's when, see, and that's the thing. They had, what is it, in the Breakfast Club is all division, right? You have all the different, the athlete, the jock, the athlete, the rebel, whatever, the weirdo, the socialite. And then they were all kind of, you can kind of see them sort of like merging together like a one world that I kind of shouted out in the middle. I'm like, oh man, now they're going to do the whole one world. They're going to come together and hang out. And that's essentially what the end result of all this is going to be. We're going to have a one world where it's not going to be like so homogenized, but we will eventually breed tolerance to diversity in the population, with natural law doing what natural law does. And you have to understand what natural law is. Along with man-made law, that whatever the laws are in that society, you got to abide by it. Even though, yeah, we hear about stuff in high levels of government and are like, oh, that was bad, that's illegal. And if someone in the lay population did that, they couldn't get away with it. But again, that's the thing, is that if already that is if harming, how would I say this? Oh gosh. If looking at harm to minors, pictures and images, is your proclivity and it's against the law, just because someone did it in high levels of government and got away with it this still doesn't make it right. Okay? Because it's not. It's downright gross. So that's why we're in a surveillance society, because we know that's in the population, and it'll come up through electronic means. All right? But just because the elite have gotten away with a lot of stuff that probably you and I couldn't get away with, doesn't still make anything right. If you don't have those proclivities, then it's not going to matter whether or not someone gets held accountable for it or not. It's none of your business. You hold yourself to a standard, to whatever it is, and let the system be the judge, jury, and executioner. And that means the legal system, not your friends and family and strangers on Facebook, the legal system. So then you have to be the one to know how the rules are played in your society. Okay, so that's what I took away from yesterday, with the Vietnam War and all of that, and then the Breakfast Club and the programming of people, and then all the shit that went on with me and the whole Dr. Phil, and then everyone that was in my husband's world, in my old world, and even in my, not so much my current world too much, because people know me really in my current world. They may have their reservations about me, think that I'm crazy, and that's fine. But people that don't know me, that knew me, but they live 2,000 miles away or 1,000 miles away, that wanted to just string me up psychologically, intellectually, whatever. Yeah, that's the intolerance. And their intolerance came out because I've proven myself. Whether or not you fucking believe my shit, I really don't care. But I have proven myself. And I figured out immortality. I was able to articulate it. And so just because someone introduces something new and different doesn't mean that they're Satan. Okay? Because you were programmed in California. You were programmed in your politics, in your fucking religions, in your science dogmas. You were programmed. And now we have kids that have a lot of trauma in their body, mind, and spirit. And they're going to have to release that trauma or end up in a predictable outcome with which people already accept anyway. So then what's the issue? Yeah, I don't know what the issue is, but people still hate me anyways. And then you have the system weaponizing sisters and brothers against each other. Parents doing that. But they don't even know they're doing that because they were told to act in a certain way. That's what that teacher represented, was an abusive parent, like Anna Nicole Smith's mom, who's a cop, probably was very heavy-handed, which is probably why there was so much issues between her and her mom, plus and stuff I'm sure that happened when she was a baby. So, and of course being, having a dad that was like that, like a predator, I guess. And so, yeah, so society was told to treat their kids a certain way, was told to raise their kids a certain way, was told to program their kids a certain way, and were given grants and allowances to do stuff above and beyond what somebody else would normally be able to do because they were in the sciences field. And so now we really literally have to breed that out of the population. And at this point right now, it's like, because when you've put so much emphasis on sexuality, so much emphasis on being such a good person too, so much emphasis on, even in the sports industry, in this environment, so much emphasis in starvation and fear of symptoms, so much emphasis on not changing. You know how hard it is to get people to realize what the fuck they were programmed into and how to get rid of that program? You know how hard it is? It's fucking difficult, if not impossible. with so many of those self-help gurus out there, I won't say the names, I'm not trying to target them too much. They're all like, oh yeah, you can have everything. The motivational speakers that sell you their packages and packages of how you get ahead and do this, win friends and influence people. I mean, there's Dale Carnegie. That you work out and you eat right and you lose a bunch of weight and you're made of hardly any fat and you're always paying it forward. Well, how far has that gone, people? Because they're still dying. They're still suffering. And even more so in an accelerated environment. And how much money have you forked over to all those politics, religion, and scientific self-help groups? At least when I went to landmark education back in the 90s, at the height of my development, when you think about it, in my 20s, at least I was able to use that information today in my 50s and throw away some of the others and make realizations about some of the programs that are out there that came out of the 1970s. Okay, because California, the hub of self-help everything, psychological programming, drug programming, and then it gets repackaged for the 2000s. But at least all the money I forked over to all these places, it's going to save my fucking life because I also developed something on top of that. I evolved all that information. I was able to change my lifestyle, change my belief system, release the demons, take on food, change the way I spoke, and release the fear of looking a specific way. I could give a shit what I look like. I could care less if I'm not meeting someone's visual aesthetics, expectations, that I'm okay with being bigger at one point, because the environment's changed. My body's producing a lot of proteins, and so it's going through that evolution. And then I release the demons, and everything is great. And I don't feel bad for that. And I'm able to give you a scientific reason why things happen, and a societal construct reason, and also my own reasons. And I'm not coming from love, because it's not about love, because love is about dying and reproducing and destroying people while you're taking their resources. I'm not from hate. Okay? I'm not pounding the word of God in anyone. I just kind of mind my own business. I put information out there. I make realizations and revelations and awarenesses, and I'm willing to share it with people because why not? Why not share it with people? That's the whole point of being human, is we share what we have discovered regardless. I don't care what it is. And that's all over Facebook. Everyone's sharing what they're discovering, whatever it is. That's the human condition. But I don't convert people. I don't actively try to convert anyone. I could care less what you do or do not do. If we have agreement on stuff and we're able to get along on some level, hey, that's fucking awesome. That's rare. That I don't have to feel like we align through substances. What is it? That whatever friendships that I have are not based upon drugs, sex, except for my husband. Sex, I guess, and surviving. But I can actually have relationships based upon just meeting of the mind. Without religion, without politics, without even major science stuff. And I can appreciate people for where they are. I don't have to convert them. They're not bad or wrong or anything else. I still hold, yes, a little bit of anger towards the people in California. People that I kind of grew up with a little bit but I knew that also was a programming. And will there ever be a relationship? Most likely not, because I don't even see it really happening. That's a lot. There's a lot of shit that people got to deal with. And some will not survive it. They might be aware of it. And I'm coming out with a lot of stuff, but I'm not saying any names. I'm not saying any family names. Or I'm not saying anything except for my background. But I know, but part of me still feels a little bit angry at those in California. which is why I left. And when shit really came out and around Dr. Phil, and they really just thought the worst of me. And I never did really anything to anyone, really. I explained the whole thing with my sister and what we were weaponized against each other way back in our childhood. So I haven't done anything to anybody in California at all when you think about it. Especially people that I grew up with, that I grew up with on some level. I didn't do shit to them. Oh, but they had no problem thinking the worst of me. No fucking problem thinking the worst of me. No problem at all. If anything, I was disposable to them. That's what I'm angry at the most, is I was basically a disposable human being to them. That may not be what they were thinking. They're like, oh, she's just troubled. She's going off, going here, going there, doing this, doing that. So yeah, when I came out to Dr. Phil, only one person and my sister I was able to say hi to you, but everyone else said, yeah, fuck you. So that's why I say like this to people in California, because it was like they had no problem thinking the worst of me. I can understand people that in my husband's world that are like, wow, she's crazy. Now she's doing the whole J world and she's killing everybody with salt. I give them a little more leeway because they don't know me as well. But people in California, yeah. So, but now it's like everything is 180. I'm not, now they're going to have to suffer for their own bullshit, and that's fine. They'll either figure out the J world or not. But now you see kind of like why I tried to fit in with some, I tried to fit in, so I swear I tried. But you can't fit in with things that are intrinsically at your gut level you don't agree with. You can't. Your body won't allow you to fit in with things that are not good for you. Your body won't. Okay, so your gut will tell you everything what you need to know, and so yeah, moving around for me was the way in which I was able to get away from shit. So, okay, and so people think, oh, that's unstable. Well, guess what? It was evolution. It was information. It was, and so now I have the capacity to deal with change. I can change like that if I need to. It's not going to be so aggressive. It won't be a diagnosable condition. It won't be trauma to me. But it will be trauma to other people who are like, oh, Jillian's stupid. Oh, Jillian's this. Oh, Jillian's that. It'll be trauma to them, and they will have a hard fucking time changing, if they even can change at all. So now I'm looking back, and you can hear me you can probably hear in the background that I'm kind of gloating in a way. Part of me is, because of how much bullshit I went through the last 7 years trying to get this thought process out to those who are so fucking intolerant. But I guess, what was it in Bob Dylan's Times Are Changing? The losers, right? They thought I was a fucking loser. We'll be winners. Well, yeah, I guess that's the situation now. Is that nice to gloat, Jillian? No, but I'll tell you that right there is probably one of the biggest things, one of the biggest demons in me was the fact that I just could not fit in. And no one, I mean, I won't say they didn't accept me. Well, here's the thing. Having PMS and PMDD, when you want to stay home because you feel like shit, your fucking PMS comes up, you feel like shit, you feel bloated, you feel depressed, you feel all this stuff. And so you don't go to a birthday party. You don't go to some family gathering. You buy maybe you don't have enough money because you're working at some job that you're going to have to go to another job, so you're not paid a lot, so you can't afford the expensive gifts to give to someone's kid or to somebody during a holiday or a birthday. So when you don't go to birthday parties, if you do go to a birthday party and you give like some crazy gift that really isn't expensive or socially acceptable, they're like, oh wow, she's cheap, oh she's this. And so it's expensive to belong to families. You have to give up your body, mind, and spirit to be part of people that look at material goods as a representation of love and respect. And that's happened a few times. That they call you selfish because you're just trying to fucking survive and you can't afford all the fucking bullshit, all the material shit that because they're on their drugs, they've had their operations. They probably didn't even have half the shit that I went through, or maybe they did, but they're on their drugs, they had their operations, and now they're dealing with all their bullshit. Now they're dealing with autoimmune disorders. Now they're dealing with the body breaking down. All right, we're not doing that. We're not doing high. So yeah, sorry, I don't mean to be mean to people that are coming on that I don't know, they're not friends with me, trying to communicate through this, but when I'm talking, just don't interrupt. Just leave it. Especially if you're not a friend of mine, because I have no idea your intention. But, I mean, that's the thing, and so yeah, part of me is still dealing with shit from California, and it's finally gonna come out. It's gonna be like, it's all getting out. It's getting out. It's out. But again, I'm not gonna put any names out there. They know who they are. They know how intolerant they were to me. And I've even spent time with people. I went to their... Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, now... They know how intolerant they were to me. All right. They know how... And I was nice to them. And I don't know. Whatever. Block. And I'm nice. I just never did anything to people in California when you think about it. I didn't do anything. Did I deserve the treatment? But it doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't matter at this point. I mean, it does and it doesn't. But I just needed to get it out because we're all trying to get through bullshit. And I have a platform to do it. You guys will choose your platform and figure out your platform. But this is my platform. And I'm not trying to defame anyone. I don't want to defame anyone. I'm not trying to put anyone, out there, on display in the past, whatever. No. They know who they are. But it's something that I needed to do. And so it's interesting so that you guys know who stalks you, and that's fine. When you look at your suggested friends, just so you know, I know what people look at. You look at your suggested friends and you look at people you may know. Those people are probably looking at your Facebook. And I'm fine with it. I don't care. But I know who's coming through. Who's watching my stuff. That's fine. I have it on open for a reason. But I want you to know that I know. Okay? I want you to know that I know. And that's why I'm saying this. Nobody else can see who's watching me, if we're not friends. But I want you to know that I know that you're watching my page. But I'm not going to out you and say anything, let me tell you, some people in back in California has supported me and been there for me. And I know others, and I'm okay with the ones that weren't. I'm not looking for people to give me money and all that shit. But a hello or like that, yeah. But all that, I don't know. So anyway, I'm because it's been pretty interesting looking at the suggested friends and people you may know coming through, and it's people from the past, and I'm like, holy shit, what is that? What am I saying that's attracting them? Well, when you've been programmed to be sexual, programmed to be religious, programmed to be whatever it is, programmed to be a Stepford wife, programmed to be a holistic person, programmed to be, and Silicon Valley is the height of the programming, and you've been in Silicon Valley and probably have the same type of programming, it's going to resonate. And so And then even with the whole LGBTQ, with the whole Dr. Phil, of me saying, yeah, a kid made from a man or a woman, and we know that we have transgenders, binary, non-binary. And so I came from the world of man, woman, but now we have men that want to be women, and I'm fine with that. We have women that want to be men. Okay, I'm fine with that. I never said anything against that. I just said, hey, a baby's from a man or a woman. Now I guess we got to throw out the word man and woman, because now it's like they, them, and he, she, or they and them. But they turned that into a slam against the LGBT community. And people in my world that I were friends with that are gay bought those articles hook, line, and sinker. Never bothered to even ask me where I was coming from with that. And so they already thought the worst of me. So that's what I'm most upset at, is the people that I thought I had some connection with, even a little bit, had no problem thinking the worst of me. No fucking problem thinking the worst of me. Couldn't wait to make me the demon in their world. That's politics. That's religion. That is religion, like in the truest sense. That's what I was surrounded with for many years. Many years. And religion comes out in so many different ways. It's not always with some kind of God or devil. It's people that can't wait to think the worst of you. Can't wait to think the worst of somebody else. Can't wait to string them up. That's the, not only intolerance, that's the juvenile part of humanity. Is they can't wait to find the enemy. They can't wait. And then they gather together, band together. And the camaraderie. Oh, the camaraderie. Oh, let's hang out together. Band together, whether it's on Facebook or out there in the community. Can't wait to hang out together and string someone up psychologically, intellectually. Can't wait to do that. Fucking salivating to do that. That's what I experienced with the people in California that couldn't wait to do that and had no problem going there. And they've known me. So anyways, so now that I'm almost 50, the blinders are off. The blinders are off. So now you see why we're in a depopulation agenda. Now you see what the system developed. Intolerance, constant reproduction on bodies at deficit. People looking for an enemy all over the place. They can't wait to find one. They can't wait to find absolution in something. So they don't ever have to feel guilty about their part in any of it. I mean, so the system we're in a great reset for a reason. So yeah, my background and the conspiracy world and then everything that I've been talking about, it's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm to realize what I've been raised in, what I was surrounded by, and where we're going, and why it's happening the way it's happening, and why a lot of your friends and family are dropping like flies. And you can blame it on the people who did the V's or did not do the V's. You can blame it on the air, food, water, and GMO, and non-organic, and meat, milk, cheese, and eggs, and fruits and vegetables, and all that shit. But in reality, it's all you. It's all you. And if you can't even come to terms with how you have allowed somebody else to tell you what to be in fear of, to tell you who to worship, to tell you who to be, then you deserve whatever you get. You deserve whatever you bring into your life until you fucking wake up. Well, that's mean, say they deserve. Well, then maybe it's time to realize that you have to re-examine everything you were taught. But the enemy isn't out there. I'm not the enemy. Bill Gates isn't the enemy. Even the climate isn't the enemy. It's your lack of tolerance is the enemy. The fact that you allowed everyone to tell you what to do. that we now have so much information that now it's up to you to slow the fuck down, maybe change the way you look at money and wealth and lifestyle, realize what you can afford to take away so you can finally save yourself. But if that's not the case, then that's fine. Okay? But that's the thing, is that if you want to save yourself, you're going to have to take a back seat to all the shit out there and start focusing on yourself. And it's not God that's going to save you. It's not Jesus is going to save you. Believe me. Satan is not trying to destroy you. You have your own trauma. You have your own trauma that you're either going to hold on to, those demons, or you're going to release them. And I'll tell you, the holistic world will give you every fucking way to release demons, but they will build more on them, build more onto you because of the herbs, the extracts, the detoxes. And so now you have to figure out, what does releasing demons mean? The whole J world is not about developing demons. The whole J world is about releasing demons in a way that doesn't give you more demons, doesn't add more trauma to the body. The whole J world is about feeding your body. The whole J world is staying away from the herbs and the extracts and the operations and the detoxes. But again, you're going to be wanting to figure out if you can handle it or not. The whole J world is about staying away from drugs and alcohol and distractions. The whole J world is about really doing things so differently than what's been done before. And that realize that the words that you use are the spells that you cast upon yourself and other people. And so when you tell people that life is short, play hard, you have just cast a spell not only on yourself, but other people of death. And if I see people say that on Facebook, I immediately unfollow them because they are casting spells. But that is the depopulation agenda. These are the people who cast spells on themselves and cast spells on their audience. And when you're aware of the spells that are being casted through herbs, extracts, and religion, and the whole life is short, play hard people, bucket list people, when you realize that is the beginning. When you realize what you say and who you follow are the spells. That's the magic that Disney was talking about. The words are the magic. And if you're just repeating somebody else's words, like from old texts, from people who were dead, without countering it, if it sounds like it's something, well, see, here's people who are dead that will say both good life and death stuff, which is why I've had issues with like Rumi and other, but then there's people that have said stuff in the past that I have also repeated. And they have something to say, yes. But it's when you worship everything that they say, because they ended up dead for a reason. Because people are either full of, people are today, right now, those are alive, they have life and death in them. You'll hear life stuff from them and you'll hear death stuff from them. I follow the life stuff, not the death stuff. When someone's dead, they may have some life stuff that is relevant for people who are alive, but they also bought into the death programming. But can you share the stuff that they share that are alive? Yes. But how much of it, to what extent do you worship someone who's dead? Whether it's Rumi or Buddha or Jesus or Allah, that's where you're going to figure out how much are you willing to share it to the point where you don't convert yourself into death. Okay? Because I'm an advocate for life. Literally, I'm an advocate for life. And so, yeah. So this is some things that Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to go, but I wanted to share that part of the J world, about the Breakfast Club, about watching the Vietnam documentaries, Vietnam War documentaries, and then the people that I used to hang out with, that I used to know, that knew me, how I was raised, knew me from a childhood, couldn't wait to think the worst of me. Couldn't fucking wait to think the worst of me. And then when I figured out what my mother did as far as weaponizing my sister and I against each other, at this point, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. What's done is done. That was the intention. Division. That's probably okay. I'm okay with it. Because then you realize some people have a lot of baggage that you may not want to be a part of, because it could be dangerous. All right, bye.